So, Yakuza 0 takes place in 1988 in Japan. You get to play as two main characters, Kazuma Kiryu and Goro Majima. Each character has their own storyline. So with Kiryu, you get to play as a guy who's kind of trying to rise up the ranks of the Yakuza, who's still new to Yakuza and kind of just doing the low-level job that lower-tier Yakuza does. While on the other side, you have Goro Majima, who's actually been in the Yakuza already, but his storyline revolves around him trying to get back into the Yakuza. He's done something that was a sin against the Yakuza family, and now he's kind of shone off into his own thing, and they are controlling him. They're trying to see what they could get out of him, and the fact that he's trying to get back into the Yakuza. Yakuza 0 is told between the two characters, Kiryu and Majima. Each one has, a certain chapter, and then it switches to, Majima or Kiryu. So it doesn't really matter. It just switches back and forth. The story is told through three different types of styles. You got the in-game cutscenes. You got the cutscenes with the character models, and you got this weird little a cutscene that kind of looks like a noir type stills, and it just goes black and white, and then you just see the characters talking. You don't see their mouths moving. You don't see any action going on. All you see is just the subtitles, and that's it. The story is pretty consistent throughout the whole game. I mean, you have some really high points and you have some pretty low points. I feel like in the middle of the game it was a little bit slow, but in the beginning and towards the end, oh my gosh, they grip you so quick that it's just like it won't let its claws go, and you're just riding, mostly towards the end, you're just riding this wave that is just super high and intense until the very end. So while everything is pretty neatly packaged, I find myself that the game, when you have to switch between different characters, it kind of really kills the flow of the game. I felt like, and it goes the same as Yakuza, was it 3 or 4, and you swap between different characters. Towards the end of the chapter, you get this big old moment that, you find out about something, and then it's like, oh hey, let's go to Majima, or let's go to Kiryu's side, and it really kills the flow of the game. I just wish you could kind of play through this person's aspect first, and then the second person's aspect, and then it finishes at the end. Now we get to talk about one of my favorite characters from the game, and it's not really a character, it is Kamuchiro itself, the city that you're in. I mean, the city is bustling. It has people littered everywhere, and they're doing their own things. They're smoking outside, they're drunk, they're talking to girls, girls talking to boys, and things like that. You got gangsters just hanging around at sections where you get to fight them and things like that. They're very 80s look to the game. You got people partying everywhere. You got parties everywhere, disco dancing and things like that. You got this world that's bright, colorful, and then at nighttime you see where all the the lights glows, and then now it's very 80s look, very dirty, trash everywhere, and people are smoking everywhere. I also give props to the side characters too. You have pretty awesome Yakuza bosses that you get to talk to, and they are menacing. Even looking at them, I'm like, holy smokes, I don't know if I want to go up against these guys in real life, because they look like they could just chew me out. But you also have awesome little characters that you see in subquests and things like that. I think those are pretty fun to play with. Those people are weird but funny.
帰ったらチェックしてみろよ。案外ハマって俺より詳しくなるかもな。さあ。
Now, the Yakuza 0's combat hasn't really changed from the past Yakuza games. It's still foremost a beat-em-up game. You get into a battle, and it's usually triggered by going, walking around the streets, getting into a random battle, or getting into a boss fight. And when that happens, you're locked into a really just kind of a small arena type, on the streets or something like that. And of course, each character has kind of a combo string. They usually go with hitting square and triangle together would do a different combo, or hitting a string of squares and a string of triangles will do different combos. Another battle mechanic in Yakuza 0 is called the heat mode. When that happens, when you get into the heat mode, your character actually starts to flame up. You see flames going around your characters, and it depends on what technique he's using. It's a different type of color flames. But when that happens, you pretty much can hit triangle, and sometimes when you're fighting a character or a bad guy or something like that, you see a triangle that pops up, and then when you hit it, you actually do this cutscene attack that really just does a massive amount of damage. When that triggers, you're either grabbing an enemy or you're in a good distance or they're down or something like that. Most of the times my attacks were when they were down. What that does is when they're down on the ground, you hit triangle and you see that triangle pop up. You hit it and he does like a downward attack. You know, he smashes their head on the ground. He kicks them in the face or he does a jump on their face or something like that. So with Yakuza 0, they added a new combat mechanic into the game. Each character now has 3 different types of stance. Each stance is a little bit different. You know, each one corresponds to a speed. So you got your normal stance, which is a little bit of basic of good attack and a good defense and good, you know, good speed. You also have like a stronger stance. You have, you know, it gives you more defense and more attack, but it makes it a little bit slower. Or you have the super fast attacks that you know, are much more quicker. They combo a lot more, but they also sacrifice in defense and in strength. While not spoiling all the techniques for each character, Kiryu has his B stance, which is probably my favorite stance for Kiryu. That stance is a little bit different because it gives you a when you're in he mode, it gives you a more of a golden glow or yellow glow around you, and you pretty much are a beast. That's what it means, beast stance. So what that happens is when you use beast stance, you have a higher defense, and when you actually block with that stance on, you just kind of take it. You don't throw your hands up or anything like that. You pretty much just kind of do like a you know, I'm taking this stance, and they're hitting you, and you're just standing there like that. And what is cool about that stance is you actually pick up items on the ground. So you just pretend you have like a little, like a motorcycle off to the side there. You don't have to press circle to grab the motorcycle. You just hit square, which is the attack one, and he automatically picks it up and he swings at enemies. And of course, with that stance, you get a boost in attack with an item. Now, on the other hand, you got Majima, who's my favorite stance is the break stance, which is a break style dancing fighting technique. I just think that stance is totally broken. I mean, he does windmill attacks and he could swirl around you know, enemies. That's a perfect stance for fighting against a whole bunch of enemies because he could stun lock them. Mostly bosses, man, he could stun lock a boss with that attack and you pretty much win. So it's a pretty much broken attack, but it is one of my favorite attacks. It's a little bit tough to work around, but I totally like it just because the fact that when you're fighting a boss fight, you can just stun lock him in the corner. But even with all that around Yakuza 0, it's still a Yakuza game. I mean, a lot of the Yakuza games from the past had problems, like it's just very archaic looking, you know, fighting styles, and that's how it is. The game is really just a beat 'em up, a very old school type of fighting style. I have problems like, you know, trying to lock onto a certain type of enemies. There is no lock on; it just locks onto the person that's closest to you, and then if you knock him back, it locks onto a different character. So it's a weird way of fighting it. I personally, you know, after playing a while, you kind of overcome it, but at the same time, it does get a little bit frustrating. So in Yakuza 0, they took out the leveling system of the game. Now it's not a leveling system. Now it's really just how much money you have. You gotta collect a lot of money, and with money you can actually upgrade your different stances, give them more abilities, give you more health, give you more attack power. So now, like before the old Yakuza games, it's just levels. You get a level, you put your point into that you know, certain level, and then you put it to ability. With Yakuza 0, you get money, and you use money into that, you know, game itself, into that ability, into that stance, and it gives you, you know, and it goes from, you know, a few 100,000 to millions to billions. So it is a lot of money, but once you get into like the later half of the game, that's when you start to rack up money anyway, so it becomes a little bit easier. But in the beginning, you're stuck with what you have. So, when not kicking in people's skull, Yakuza is littered with a bunch of activities and side quests that you can do. Side quests aren't usually marked on your map. You kind of have to just walk around the, you know, the Kamuchuro, and kind of it just pops up at you. Different locations and things like that. You have certain chapters, certain you know, quests that has to be done before that. So sometimes it just pops up randomly, and you can do them. You don't have to do them right away. You could just leave, and then, you know, it's marked on your map after you kind of initiate it. But before that, there is nothing to tell you. Side quests are a little bit different. They are more on the funnier side. You got the main story that it's, you know, totally drama, and, you know, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. But side quests on the other end is kind of funny. You got some weird things like you have to fight. There's a kid who gets his game stolen, and you have to find out who stole his game, and or you got this dominatrix that you have to help her out because she's not really good at being a dominatrix. So you have to teach her how to become a dominatrix, and you do it in front of kids, and it's totally weird like that. But when you're done with the side quest, you get the last part of the side quest, and then there's always a very touching tale of them telling you, I've just done this and done that, and it is really cool to see that even though it's on the funnier side, when you're done with the quest, you see a more a toned down version of the quest, and it's just it's a very touching moment. I mean, spoiler alert, when you help the kid out with his stolen game, and he comes, when you finish it, you find out the guy who stole it, or it goes into a multiple people who stole the game. This person stole the game for this person, and this stole the game from this person, and you find out who it is, and then you're like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. And, he did it for his son, which is the one he stole it from. So it's pretty cool. So, the side quests are pretty touching like that at the end. There's also a plethora of different activities you can do, like bowling, billiard balls, and darts. There's also things like mahjong and catfight betting. And yes, catfight betting is totally weird. It's something that, I don't know, I can't even talk about it, and I actually have a video for that you can look at. You can also go to different places like erotic movies. You can watch like erotic movies. It's not really like, rated, whatever. It's very just these girls in bikinis and things like that. Or you can go and talk to girls over the phone, which is pretty funny. And of course, I saved the best for last. You got some weird activities like karaoke, which is probably one of my favorite things to do. And of course, since it's in the 80s, you're going to get a lot of dancing in the club, and that to me was pretty cool. There are so many activities that you can do it in the game. I suggest you just go and do it. I mean, doing it once, it's okay. You can just go around, go to every spot that you can and just try it out and find which one you like. Like I said, I personally like karaoke, or I like doing little smaller things like going to just restaurants and go and eat out with, healing myself, and then, just going and eating out and testing all these food. And of course, when you do go and eat out, things like that, you also get these cool things called CP points, which you could spend it on your character. So it's a good way to do.
Congratulations on winning! You're amazing!
Now for graphics, the game isn't really that great looking. I mean, it looks like the old Yakuza games, just a little bit more sharper since it's on the PlayStation 4. You got the in-game models that look pretty decent at most, but then when you get to the CGI stuff, when you get to the cool cutscenes and things like that, it totally changes. I mean, you look at your characters, or you look at the other characters, you can see like pores on their face and things like that. I think that looks pretty awesome. So, but other than that, everything else looks pretty decent. The city Kamaturo is okay at best. It has a lot of lights, it has a lot of dirt, a lot of grime, and that's pretty cool to me. But graphically, it's kind of not as sharp as you see other cities. It's very in the distance you can see it kind of blur out, but other than that, to me, it looks like a city. Now for performance wise, Yakuza 0 steps up a bit. It is running at 60 frames per second, which all the other Yakuza games were running at 30. So it's a little bit different from the other Yakuza games. But the difference between this one is, with it being 60, it does have a few drops here and there, mostly when running around the city. It doesn't really drop too much when you're fighting, which is the key point of the whole game. Is there's a lot of fighting you do in the game, but it doesn't drop in there only at certain times in the game, which is weird because when you're just running around the city, it drops in weird moments. You could tell it too when you're swinging your camera around, or you're kind of just walking up this alley and just like the frame rate just tanks. So in the end, I'll be giving Yakuza 0 a 9 out of 10. Awesome story, and I love the story so much. I mean, like I said, it has its low moments, but most of the time it's very well told, and you're just at the edge of your seat the whole time. You're just kind of like, let me see what happens next. And But with the the chapter switching, it kind of ruins that a bit, kind of that flow. But other than that, I really like the story. The action is freaking brutal, just as other Yakuza. I don't think it's as brutal as Yakuza 4 or Yakuza 5, but it's up there. And I do like the fact that it changes up, with your stance and things like that. It changes up the whole fighting style, fighting mechanics of the game. Now the story is told through those two characters, Majima and Kiryu, and I like this. It's a good way to get into the Yakuza series. You don't really have to know anything about the characters. I personally myself started in Yakuza 3, so you can start anywhere. But with the Yakuza 0, there is no backstory to them. It's just, you play these two guys, and if you play the old games before, that's cool, because you get to know who they are. You get to see what they've done in the past and what happens up to that point. But with Yakuza 0, you don't have to know the characters. You just know that they did this and did that, and then you just play through. And it kind of goes along, and you see reference from Yakuza 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you see reference from there. But like I said, you don't really have to know anything about the characters. So will I recommend this game to people? Heck yes, I will. It's like I said, it's a well-told story with pretty good action. I mean, other than the faults of its archaic looking fighting styles and things like that, it's still a pretty well made game, well made battle system. But like I said, it's a heck yeah. It's so many things you can do. I think I clocked in about 88 hours, and I'm not even barely scratched the game yet. I mean, if you want a game that lets you play forever, for a long time, this is the game for you. And also, there's so many activities you can do. It's a world, like I said before, what makes Grand Theft Auto games a perfect game. It's a world that lets you kind of live in it, and this is what it is. Kamurocho is a world that you live in. You like the characters that you have, you like the activities that you have in the world, and the city that it's always hustling and bustling. It has a lot of people around. It looks like a real live world, other than like kind of like Watch Dogs 2, where it's a big city, but there's not a lot of people around there. Kamurocho is different. It has a ton of people around here. And of course, like I said, just the activities. There's so many activities you can do. Just doing mundane stuff, or these cool tournament fights and things like that. It's a real weird world, but an awesome world at that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my review for Yakuza 0. Of course, don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you guys like my channel, my videos, and don't forget to like my videos too. So anyways, this is Omega Belmont, and I'll see everybody next time. Peace out.